Lie special US goods imports. Subject talk. Nationwide UK video. UK 25.
And services added together of 180 billion to the US, but only 60 billion of that is goods. That's the bit Donald Trump cares about. That's where the US jobs he thinks are. Now, of that 60 billion, cars are at the top. We export around £9 billion worth of cars.
First April Fool's Day, close to 2025.
Medical equipment are all in the top 5. And let's drill down into those car figures. You saw all those Range Rovers ready for export in Faisal's report. JLR is the biggest auto exporter to the US. It's 25% of its sales, bigger than China, bigger than the EU, and they sold over 100,000 vehicles in the US last year. Also, of course, a huge UK employer, so the company and its workforce will be watching all this very anxiously. One sector that knows all about the impact tariffs can have is the Scottish whisky industry, which was hit with tariffs in Donald Trump's first term in office.
I think it's a huge blow for the whole of the Scotch whisky industry.
For the thumbs up on the right side of the screen for me right now, please.
One of our biggest markets.
And subscribe to my channel on Signage Evans.
For us personally, it represents 10% of our sales. So it's clearly going to be a big blow, especially with the current economic headwinds that we're all experiencing. We're all going to find this very difficult and very challenging.
Now, business generally supports.
We're going to a session in the UK because of him. He has made it happen for us. Well, make it worse for us.
A tariff shock to add to the other pressures they're facing.
Simon, thanks very much, Simon Jack. Well, let's assess where we are tonight as we wait for all these details. Faisal Islam and Chris Mason alongside me. Faisal, I mean, this could be huge tomorrow.
Yeah, there's some uncertainties and there's some big judgments that will be revealed over the next 24 hours. Firstly, in terms of what President Trump, where he exactly alights in terms of how this will function. But in general terms, we've been given a clue as to the size of this by some of the advisors saying it will be worth trillions.
Huge. This is bad.
Of dollars a year.
Real debt.
And if you get that and equivalent retaliation from around the world, then you are looking at some of the historical precedents which proved hugely impactful on the world economy from a century ago. So a big deal indeed. And then there's this judgment from the rest of the world, including the UK, in terms of how exactly to retaliate, if you are going to retaliate. And then the knock-on impact that you probably wouldn't even consider.
There goes our special relationship with America.
There are tariffs on China, we don't retaliate, all the Chinese goods that were due to go to the US actually just end up in the UK, and should we try and stop those? All sorts of judgments, but a bigger thing going on too, which this is the world's number one hyperpower turning its back on the model of globalization that has served the world and grown its economy for some time. And one last thing is, it's the premise upon which this is happening that the US is being ripped off. Now we repeat that because that's what they say. It is highly questionable. The US has become very rich on this model of globalization. We use their financial services, we use their tech companies. We don't say that they're ripping us off. So there's a lot of challenges, a lot of uncertainty, and some big judgments ahead.
And Chris, how much nervousness in government?
There is a fair sprinkle of the jitters. So we've had the Foreign Secretary David Lammy today talking about preparing for the worst. I think there's a recognition that this is going to be a moment of theatre, which is something that Donald Trump really likes, that there was no prospect, they concluded, of talking America down in advance. Where they try and find some optimism is that they hope the announcement tomorrow night will be the ceiling from which they can negotiate the White House down. There's these ongoing negotiations over a limited trade deal. They feel like they are making substantial progress on that. But politically, the big challenge is they've adopted this strategy of not shooting their mouth off, of carrying on talking and remaining calm. That will be their strategy after the announcement tomorrow night. But politically, how sustainable is that as and when the UK is whacked with tariffs, and then there is a gap of however long before some other deal can be done, and perhaps others around the world are being much more vocal in their opposition. And one final thought, Jane, about the unpredictability at the heart of all of this. I was talking to someone in government this evening about this, and I said, to what extent have you a reasonable sense of what's coming and you're waiting for the announcement, or are you waiting like the rest of us for the jeopardy of the announcement? They said, more of the latter.
Chris.
So hands up the right side screen. Subscribe on Signage Evans.